Survival.
I hear her.
Yeah, we don't look down. Oh shit, she's here. Can't see her. I can't. Oh, I wasn't even looking at her. Oh my god. Okay, we're gonna go over some miscellaneous survivor tips that I have. For number one, you've probably heard something like, don't work on gens together, split up. In fact, I used to preach that myself very vehemently, but I have since wisened up. I do believe that the best survivor setup is two people on one generator, one person on another generator, and the last person being chased, of course. So that's the setup you would have during a chase. But that's the ideal setup. You could do 3 people on separate gens, you could do 3 people on the same gen. But the point being is that if you have 2 or more people on the same generator, that means the person being chased doesn't even have to be that good, or they can make more mistakes and it'll still be okay. Because if you still get generators down, even just one generator for one hook, that's still the fast track to victory. So tag teaming on generators, in short, lowers the chase requirement for a successful victory as Survivor. Moving on to the next point. So you've probably heard people say, don't drop that pallet, or you shouldn't waste shack pallet, or things like that. Okay, we're just gonna get rid of that entirely. No pallet is special. If a pallet stops you from being hit, it's serving its purpose. If you wanted to be greedy and hold pallets while you're in healthy state, that's actually acceptable. However, most importantly, if a pallet prevents you from being downed and being hooked, you use it. That's it. End of story. There is no, oh, but it's better late game to have these pallets. That doesn't make any sense. If you're saving a pallet now and being hooked for it, just so that later you can use that pallet to prevent being hooked in a later point in the game, that doesn't make any strategical sense or logical sense. Not being hooked now is the same thing as not being hooked later. It's all the same. It buys your team time to work generators if you're not being hooked and not having to be rescued. And most importantly of all, you don't even know if you're going to be in this area at any other point in time in the game, but you know you're in the area right now, so drop the pallet if it prevents you from being hooked. It's really that simple. Tip number 3 is a very common mistake that I see people do. Be more proactive with terror radiuses. Not every killer has a terror radius, but the ones that do, which is most of them, once you hear the terror radius, start moving away from the generator. There's really no reason not to. Sure, if you got Wecky running around chasing somebody and his giant terror radius is hitting you all the time and you're constantly getting off of a generator because of the terror radius, it means that he's getting in free gen slowdown. But the honest truth is that it's not that much. You'll get a feel for what he's doing and that he's not coming after you. And it's much better than the alternative of getting hit very fast and very easily. Which one of these would you rather see as the killer? You approach a generator and it has a bunch of progress, but you can't see anybody, you don't see any scratch marks. They must have walked away, maybe they're nearby, maybe they have a bit of distance, you don't really have any way to know, and now you gotta look for them. Or you can approach a generator, somebody's still greeting out a few more seconds of progression onto it before they literally have to get off of it before you grab them off and you get a free hit on them, and now you only need one more. You have to think about it from the killer's perspective. Be the thing that they don't want to fight against. Next up, we got a real simple one. Stop opening chests. It really is that simple. And if you're running a chest opening build, first and foremost, stop running that build. But if you really insist because it's fun, it's still a game, you gotta have fun, but please understand that you are throwing the game because of it. As long as you're okay with that, then you do you. I can't stop you, unfortunately. Now here's the one that made me make the video in the first place. If you are running Adrenaline, Dead Hard, Resilience, especially all 3 of them, stop healing. This doesn't apply literally always, but it does apply almost always. Healing is 16 seconds of your time, probably 16 seconds of somebody else's, and this is time that's not being put onto generators. This is already, by default, 32 seconds not on a generator. That's more than 33% of a generator every time that you decide to heal. But you're running Resilience, which makes you do generators faster while you're injured, so you're robbing yourself of the healing time instead of doing generators, as well as the bonus from Resilience. So it's just very counterproductive of your perk selection. Adrenaline heals you for free when you do all the generators, which buys you a free roughly 32 seconds of overall team time. And you have Dead Hard anyway, so you a lot of the time won't go down in one hit. Now, Dead Hard doesn't always pan out, but for one, you can always, practice, try to get better with it. And two, that's still fine because, for example, Resilience, the vaulting speed you get from Resilience while being injured very often serves as a second health state anyway, by not being hit when you would have been hit if you were healthy and did not have Resilience active. So if you're running these perks, stop healing. You're wasting team time and you are wasting your perk selection. And considering these 3 perks are probably the most common perks in the entire game, I'd say this tip applies to most players. Like I said earlier, there are circumstances where you might still just want to heal, like if you're on Death Hook, as probably the primary example. But another example of when not to heal is the team time that you are robbed of from healing, which is roughly 32 seconds as a default. If you can't last in a chase for 32 seconds for one health state, then you're not worth healing. You are wasting more time than you are gaining by healing and then being injured in less than the time that it took to heal up in the first place. Keep that in mind. Next tip is about vaulting. A lot of the times people will say LT tiles aren't very strong. I extremely disagree. LT tiles are one of the most consistently strong and reliable tiles, and they don't rely on pallets. And additionally, strong main buildings also almost always focus around strong windows. Dead by Daylight has 2 types of fast vaulting. One is an actual fast vault, and one is actually more like a medium vault. A fast vault is only achievable if you are running head-on into a window, directly. And you do need a tiny bit of space for momentum. And what that means is not running along its wall and then vaulting it. If you do a medium vault, your character model's hitbox actually lingers in the window longer than it appears to be there, and you can be hit easily by the killer. Whereas a fast vault has the opposite effect. Your actual hitbox is past the window much earlier than in a medium vault. And as for the required space for momentum to properly fast vault, you don't need much. You can see in this clip here, I barely had any space at all. And even though you can tell visually, if you're used to the difference of the vaults, there's also a confirmation on your fast vaulting. It'll say running vault. In the middle of a game, you're not really going to notice it, but like in this case, we can freeze frame it. We can see that this very small amount of space that I gave myself was still enough for a fast vault. And the last thing I got for you is just what I think is the most important thing for looping as a survivor. Of course, as we know, if you are looping around a happy little car, if we were to say this was 25 units, whatever that means, and this is also 25 units, whatever that means. If Pinhead is ever to go 5 units this way, then we know Meg wants to go 5 units that way, and you keep doing that over and over. Pinhead goes 10 units this way, while at the same time, as soon as he makes that first unit, Meg is going 10 units the other way. But now we all know that you do that keep away. That's the first rule of looping as a survivor. But in order to do that, you always have to know what the killer's doing. And so that is the most important thing about looping well in Dead by Daylight as a survivor. Try to always make sure that you are in a position where you can see what the killer is doing, and that is by seeing the killer directly, not relying on their red stain, which is the red light that is in front of their vision, because they can walk backwards. So if you can't see if you cannot see the killer's physical body, and you don't have enough space to where if they were to suddenly show up and be visible and they're too close to you and you would get hit, then the best thing for you to do is to preemptively leave that situation entirely. Truth be told, that really is the most important thing. And I guess that being said, this guide has ran long enough. Thank you for watching, and that's that.
Bubbers.
The bubber flubber. Uh-oh, abort. Where's he coming from? That's the worst thing. Like not knowing where he's coming from, and then he's behind you.
He's right behind me, isn't he? No, he's in front of you, you idiot.
Oh, I was looking behind me.
He left me. I went to Shaq and he was afraid of Shaq.
Yeah, I believe you. So probably no bamboozle. Or he would eat that up. No Bambi. Bubber, no Bambi. It's an anime. Bubber, no Bambi.
Bubber, no. A slice of life.